Okay, we are live. And hello and welcome to the Arrrgh Book Club. And we are going to be discussing The Woman That Could Not Be Silenced by Kate Moore. I'm so excited for this discussion because I feel like this book is going to give us a lot to talk about. I was like raging reading this book, so I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, but I really liked it. This was a 5-star read for me, just like her other book. So
I haven't read anything else by her, I don't think.
I read The Radium Girls, which is
right. I haven't read
really good, equally rage-inducing. But like a really important story. But I thought this was great because I've never heard of this person before.
I hadn't either, and I started as an audiobook, and then I read the second half as my Libby came through. but I couldn't figure out who she was, and I thought I knew, and then I didn't, and then I was like, I've never heard of you before. Like, I sort of ran through different historical people who I knew something like this had happened to, but then I was surprised to have never heard of her ever.
Yeah, same.
Historical
I felt
context.
like I was supposed to know who this was, and
exactly.
I've never heard of her before, which I think is very telling about her story. Like the fact that she fought so hard, and we still don't know about her. So I'm glad this book exists.
I think it's interesting how we have, and this is going to sound, I mean, like a raging feminist, but we have men sometimes in history who've done like one thing, you know, and everybody knows about them, and we learn about them every single year in civics and all of this stuff. And like, you have someone like this who fundamentally changed women's rights before, you know, legislation, like before like federal statutes or anything. And I've never heard of this. I mean, I knew about like female incarceration by their, you know, by, I'm going to call it incarceration, but I mean, I knew about this phenomenon, but I never knew that it was a woman who like basically fixed it. So
right, like I've read about the asylums before. Like I've read other books that are about that, and I'd still never heard of her. And I just was upset about that because I feel like we should know more about her.
I can't imagine being like slowly imprisoned in your own house and then like taken somewhere where you're basically told that you're crazy for having ideas of your own. That's, I don't know.
Right. And like, I don't know that I have the mental fortitude to be anywhere near how strong she was. I think that would have broken me. Just being away from my children for so long and being told over and over that I'll never see them again. I don't think I could have managed.
And even the threat of that, like when I think about the people who like were threatened with it and were like, I'm still going to do my thing. Like, I'm still going to do it. Like, you cannot stop me. There's a certain amount of perimenopause that goes into play there, I think, for her too. but I don't know. I'm the fortitude of that, like to stand for your convictions in such a real way is remarkable. So.
Yeah, I definitely admire her for that because I don't know. I like to think that I'm feisty and strong, but I don't know that I could handle that. Like the fact that so many bad things happened over and over, like it just that she was able to come out of that.
Mind. Yeah.
Like that's amazing.
It's an interesting thing, right? You like put a woman in an asylum in an environment where you're likely to like sort of, you know, lose your grip on reality and like hope and all these things. And then you're like, oh, look, they were crazy all along. You know, like it's one of those like diabolical things, right? Where you like, you put someone in an incredibly stressful environment and then say after the fact, well, she's insane, as you can clearly see. So, yeah. I was interested in, it was interesting to without having had experience like reading Radium Girls or anything, to listen to this book without the footnotes or anything, without seeing them, you know, and then to get the print copy like halfway through and be like, whoa, like it is so meticulously researched. I mean,
a lot went into this book. Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of like referencing she does is insane. So.
And yes, Radium Girls is a nonfiction as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I put off seeing the movie because I have to read the book, and it's like one of those things.
The movie was fine. It was good, but I mean, the book's always better.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is nice to see it happen and like have everything play out in a story form rather than in a nonfiction format, I guess. But I'd still recommend the book first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super readable, just like this was. I felt like this book for so thick, like what is it, 450 pages or something? I read this whole thing in like 4 days. So
I have to excuse myself for a second because someone has locked my husband out of the garage.
oh dear. Okay.
And no one is rescuing him. I will return.
Okay.
I found a child.
So my favorite thing ever for book club is when they include questions in the book and I don't have to go hunting for them. So
Very nice.
I thought we could go through some of the questions in here to add to the discussion. So the first question says, Elizabeth is locked up in the asylum because her husband does not agree with her religious views. Do you think modern day America is more or less tolerant of diverse religions and controversial viewpoints than in Packard's time? How free are followers of minority faiths to practice in the US today? Comparatively, I mean, I'd say it depends on how fringe your views are.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Even then, I think you're pretty free.
Like, it's pretty free. Like, there's a lot of flat earthers out there and stuff like that. And like, we all kind of snark about it, but I don't know that they would be ostracized or put in an asylum for those thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, even those harmful cults and stuff, they go pretty far without any kind of intervention, even when reported. You know, like even when people try. So
yeah.
So that whole line of like, I mean, a lot has been on my mind since the whole Chevron decision of yesterday and stuff. And, you know, this idea of taking away agency from regulatory, like taking away decision-making power, right, in the nitty-gritty from regulatory agencies who know about what's going on. It comes into play here too, right? Like when you look at like these broad overarching rules, like in the beginning when she's incarcerated and she thinks that certain things can happen, like even the writ of habeas corpus and how like she thinks that can help her, but since it's illegal incarceration, it can't, you know, since they have every right to put her away if they wanted to, whether or not she was crazy or not, you know, this is like his right to do. This idea of like having agencies that actually know about what's going on, you know, which is sort of how she ends up, right? Like at the end, like where she has like an actual institution created that like can oversee this particular type of institution, right? Like this type of asylum, this type of, you know, treatment plan and everything. I think that's so important. Like when we talk about like the cults and religious freedom and stuff like that too, it's interesting because even when people try to save their family members and stuff from things like that, they're always trying to do it like based on other things, you know, like it's not about this like cult like organization or, you know, like I think having fine oversight is so important because the issues at play with, you know, fishing and wildlife versus like insane asylums is so different, right? So like if you're trying to create this broad overarching rule, it's always going to run into exceptions.
Yeah.
You know? So. Yeah. Okay. I think social acceptance is different. I mean, I was just looking at this House of Walls comment, like social acceptance is different, right, than having like something be actually illegal.
Yeah. I'd say we've become more tolerant as far as like laws go with this kind of thing, but I don't know that we're necessarily more tolerant. Like
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is Elizabeth employs a variety of tactics, physical resistance, negotiating with hospital staff, writing, to protest her treatment throughout the book. Which techniques were most effective for her, and what strategies would you turn to in her place? I mean, overall, I think her writing ended up being the most effective.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ability to express herself and say what she needed to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was effective in both ways, right? Like internally and externally.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it gave her that tether to like
Yeah.
sanity and like purpose and hope.
Because it would
And
be so
then
easy to like start believing you're insane in a
mm-hmm.
situation like that. And I mean, that's what happened to so many women. Like once you're told it enough times, you start to believe it. So I think just the ability to have that like almost journaling aspect of it to remind yourself of your sanity.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I was like on TikTok the other day and I randomly ran into, I like follow a lot of historical TikTok, and I can't remember the name of the woman. She was basically like it was what are those marriages called when the word's on the tip of my tongue? It starts with an M, where it can't be like the children cannot be heirs to the throne because the spouse is not royal.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Too. Anyway, so it's one of these families. It has nothing to do with anything except for the fact that she was not an heir to the throne, but she was definitely a princess in that sense. Mm-hmm. And at some point she fell out of favor she was like a favorite of her father's, but she fell out of favor with her brother when he ascended the throne. And he did this kind of thing where she was imprisoned for I think like 22 years, and she did a very similar thing where she wrote like her autobiography the whole time that she was imprisoned. I think 7 years of it was spent in like a windowless cell and stuff. And then the next 15 were in a regular jail cell. But then those were published afterwards, and apparently it like changed how like royal prisoners were like imprisoned after that. This idea of like you could be treated in this inhumane way. But I mean, she said that was the only thing that kept her there, like in the world, was her writing.
Wow. So. What strategies would you turn to in her place? I don't know. I feel like I'd be one of those people that starts to think I'm crazy. I don't know. I'm not sure how I would react to something like that. But I think I would probably be like her and like just trying whatever I think might work until something does. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with how she always seemed interested in other people at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's tough too, like to not manufacture concern, but to actually be concerned, like to find, because the panic, I feel like I would be in such a panicked state.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that it would be hard to see like people around me as
like just in my head freaking out the whole time. I don't know that I'd be able to do any of what she did. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did find her just so impressive that not only was she able to like do all the things that she did, but like that she was able to take a step back and look around and like start taking note of what was happening around her, trying to help everybody. Like, I don't know. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. It's especially unusual, I think, in somebody who wants to write, who has like such an active mental life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like sometimes, for the artists and people who like find solace in that like mental exercise, that's even harder, to like kind of be present in the moment and like really see other people for who they are and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And not just sort of observing them.
Lost in my head. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
And also like that type of violence that was present like in the asylum at that time and stuff like that. It's not like you're in a like a cush, like everyone's medicated and like we're all watching TV and playing bingo kind of room. You know, it's like
Yeah.
full on like torture is happening in front of your face, and you're still trying to like improve things for people.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I always like to think that I would be able to do that, but I don't know that I actually could. Like,
Yeah. It takes a special kind of person for sure to do it. One thing that surprised me though was the fact that she didn't see through McFarland like earlier. The fact that
yeah,
she so found him to be on her side.
I was fascinated by their relationship because
Yeah.
I didn't trust him from the start. Like, this is a man who runs an asylum.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not on your side. Like, and the fact that she
Yeah.
just was so determined to like convince him of her sanity and get him to be like her savior.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kept wondering how much of this is like Stockholm syndrome, how much of this is her just like, well, this is the only person here that I can
It could have
possibly
been like one of the first males who had ever listened to her also, right? In general.
Yeah, and I think they even said like this was the first time she could like speak her mind. This was like the first time she could do like all these different things. So like I understand that to a point, but also like she's so smart that I just didn't know why she didn't realize that he would turn on her like that.
Or the danger in just being like so open, you know.
Yeah, because
and
she
starting
would
the prayer, all of that.
Yeah.
Like those moves confused me. I was like, what's happening here? Like, how is that like the proof of your sanity, since that's what they put you in the insane asylum for?
Like the vitriol about her husband, like, sure, yeah, I'd be just as furious, but that's not the thing to say here. Like, you need to pocket that away and try to focus on why you should be able to leave. But yeah.
But in a way, maybe it worked because at the end he was like, we need her out of here.
Yeah, like, yeah, he just wanted to be
radicalizing everyone.
Yeah.
I thought it was crazy that his statue was in that building for so long. Whatever building they mentioned at the end, you know, like in the epilogue or whatever. I was like, what? Like in all of this time, that's just been there.
That's just America for you. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. We always keep up those statues that we shouldn't.
Yeah. It's history.
Okay, Dr. Duncanson, the doctor who supports Elizabeth in her insanity trial, testifies that I did not agree with her on many things, but I do not call people insane because they differ with me. How relevant is this statement in America today when political opinions are so divided, and what does it do to public discourse when the idea of insanity is brought into politics? Do you think we might ever return to a time when people are locked up for holding an opposing viewpoint to those in power?
Yes.
I'd like to hope we don't.
I know, but I think that history is cyclical, right? So
yeah. So, you know, and like the last little bit in this book, like the postscript, was just like a gut punch to read. And realizing that like we're dangerously close to this whole thing again. Yeah, I mean, I like to think that we would be able to come to a place where we don't automatically assume somebody is insane for thinking a different way. But I mean, I don't know. People have such different views on things now, and it's so hard for anyone to like see outside of their bubble. I don't know.
I think the more scared people get by difference, right, and deviation from whatever we consider the norm, the more nervous they get, right? Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like I think of like book banning and
Mm-hmm.
just this idea of like what words are allowed to be used and what words are not allowed to be used and what constitutes indoctrination versus not. I mean, this idea that just knowing something exists, right? Like even like
Yeah.
going after drag queens and things like that. Like just knowing that something exists is apparently dangerous to children. Like it's this very interesting concept. Like I think that when people get afraid, they start doing, more and more heinous things, right? To the
Mm-hmm.
other. So
Yeah. And
but,
we were just reading like this past week, my daughter and I, about cognitive dissonance and the backfire effect. And like that is something that I don't know that we could ever get around completely, in that like people are so like violently opposed to hearing a different viewpoint.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
And also the lack of being able to see past different viewpoints and still
Mm-hmm.
see a person, you
Yeah.
know? Because I distinctly remember when like people disagreed and it was fine and like you didn't have to worry about being
Mm-hmm.
overheard about like what you were saying and like not just in a social media big space, but even in like small spaces,
Mm-hmm.
where
Yeah.
like I posted this thing on Instagram the other day. I mean, yesterday, I think about it was like a quote about the elephant. Like somebody said, like this is like a poem. Like the whole room is the elephant now, and there's no room to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
um, and I feel like in some ways that has happened because on
Mm-hmm.
every side of every issue, it seems there is this immediate painting of a person with one color. If you are saying any opinion that is too different, from the
Mm-hmm.
group. Like you might have belonged entirely to like a liberal camp or a very conservative camp or whatever, for the most part. There's no for the most part anymore. It's either like all or
No.
nothing,
Yeah. And
you know.
that's
If you
something
want,
that I struggle a lot with. Like
yeah.
trying to find a place where I feel like I 100% belong is almost impossible these days, because like everyone is so rigid in everything, and it's a lot. And I don't know how we'll come out on the other side of that.
Because I mean, like if you think about like a group of people who would be working for the the betterment of most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the whole to the best ability, you would really want people with different opinions, right? I mean, like
Yeah,
that's
right,
the
right.
way you get there, like is that push and pull, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
can get to some sort of like average because obviously like nothing there is no best case scenario for everyone. Like that
Yeah,
is like, this idea that there's this like utopia where like everyone is
right.
happy
I
because like
like the
that
world's a
doesn't
lot more
exist.
gray.
Yeah. So like I think
Yeah.
it's really important to have people in the same room who respect one another, who have different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Like that
Yeah.
deliberate choice. Like have I think I don't know, in my personal life too, I think one of the dangers is that you end up with friend groups that are so
Mm-hmm.
similar that, you know,
Yeah.
it's very echo chambery and
It does get
you
like
don't
that.
get
Yeah.
movement,
And I
you
know
know?
personally for me, like if I know somebody has a very opposite viewpoint of me, I am less likely to want to talk to them, just
Yeah.
because I don't want to accidentally start some
Offend.
kind of an argument or start a confrontation, because I am very
Yeah.
non-confrontational. I get
Yeah.
panic attacks like dealing with things like that. So like I'll definitely try to avoid talking to
Yeah.
people that are too opposite of me, but like obviously that's not helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think I wish we could be at once more sharp with each other and gentle with each other, you know?
Hmm.
Like I wish
Yeah.
we could be sharp without wanting to wound.
Hmm.
And like I wish we could show our knives without using them. But like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I think you can walk along together like a ragtag band. There's no
Hmm.
ragtag bands anymore of like different people you
Yeah.
get mad at. And it's fine. You still like them. And I don't know. That's
Weirdly,
something
that
that
was one of the things that I liked the most about like the Walking Dead TV show.
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
seeing all these very different people and how they were able to get along in such like in a way that they never would have when the world was normal. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And how things like children or, you know, like someone like being hurt is the thing where you're like, well, I don't care that I hate you. Like, I'm going to help you because there's 5 of us. Like, we need all 5 of us.
Weirdly, that's why I think we wouldn't actually have any kind of civil war again, because I don't think people would really go that far anymore. Like, I think in the end, I think we would be able to see through to like the person instead of the idea.
I would hope so.
I really hope so. Like, maybe I'm being stupidly optimistic there, but like, I would hope so.
I feel like that, and then I'll see like a giant American flag off the back of a truck.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a house, you know, like, a couple blocks that we pass almost every day when we take a walk, and like they've got some very upsetting signs on there, like draped across their house, and I'm just like, every time I pass, I'm like, why would you do this? But yeah, like, I don't know.
I mean, I think so, and I also wonder, you know, I don't want to be that like naive person at the end.
Yeah,
like, I never thought this would happen.
True, like yeah,
you know, I think when people get scared and when people are lacking, you know, the ability to like do things that their parents have been able to do and things like that, like buy houses and, you know, start a family at a young age and all of this stuff, like when they lack that security, I think people build walls, you know, and they like seek comfort in like identity and it's just like what happened with her husband, right? In this book, like you lose that piece of identity. Like he could not bear that, you know, there's no real reason for him to get rid of her. Like this,
right? Like
what he, like this injury that he felt to himself, like from her, you know, leaving his church and from her, like not having exactly his beliefs. I think it's very similar, you know, like I think as things start to come apart, like his own ministry was sort of running into difficulty at that time and stuff like that. Like, I think every difference, every, you know, disagreement, every, you know, other from you is like a deeper insult, you know? Like, I think the urge to lash out at that is large.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that there are some people that are just super loud, but I don't know how many of them there are. Like, I like to think there's just a few of them that are just disproportionately representing what they believe to be a larger base, but I don't know. I don't know
though. Sometimes I'm surprised. I'm surprised by people who like say that they want the betterment of all, but then when we, you know, I mean, like straight up, like when we vote, when we make decisions about, you know, people, like those two things are not divorced of each other, you know, like those concepts are not, they are the same, you know, like I think when you like show up and you say like, the thing that upsets me more than like, you know, pundits on TV and stuff are when you listen to school board hearings and you see individuals come up and stuff and talk about things. And I'm so like shocked and amazed.
People. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's so upsetting to me. Like I find it, I don't know. You're in a room with other parents of kids on the other side of these issues and stuff like that, you know, like it's very interesting to me that in a room like that, people would bring such vitriol and such hatred and such, you know, I don't know. It's very upsetting. I'm like, is it just a loud minority then? Like, is it, or is it like more than that? Is it that the loud minority gives other people credence and, you know,
that's like the part that worries me, that like how many people hear that and go, you know, I've always thought that too. Maybe I should stand up for myself. And I don't know.
Yeah. And you hear it more and more and it's like, well, I guess like there's a lot of people who feel this way, you know, and they say the quiet part out loud. Like, and the more you hear that, the more concerned I get, you know?
Yeah.
So. to what Cassidy said, I mean, this topic very timely. Like, I
Mm,
think for me, one of the things that, occurred to me is just, I mean, obviously everything that's happened with Roe v. Wade and women and just rights. And like, we used to live in Texas, and like the day that happened, my husband like canceled his, medical license there. Like we
mm,
had lived here for years, but generally, like, doctors will maintain their medical licenses wherever they've lived and just pay that fee yearly. And just in case, if you move back, it's just easier. And he was like, nope. Like today's the day. I mean, like we will never go back. And I think that, I don't know, things like Utah apparently has lost something like a third of its OBs. Like
it's
these,
wild. Yeah.
yeah, like those are real women, right? That are impacted
Mhm.
by that in a state with like, I think they only have like 3 maternal centers now. I mean, that's a huge state to only have 3 maternal centers. Like, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
That
These
kind of thing
decisions,
really scares me. Like,
yeah, because the decisions impact more than just
mhm.
the issue at hand, right? Like there's going to be women who have entirely different issues that happen that won't be able to receive care that they need because we won't have physicians willing to be under laws like that,
Mhm.
Like, this idea of, women being in a position always with like less agency over
Mhm.
themselves is fascinating. The year that we all were able to open credit cards was like in the 70s, right? It was
Yeah,
like,
it was like 73 maybe? I don't know, something like
I
that,
think
but
it was
yeah.
even later. I think it's pretty close to like when I was born.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
what?
shocking. Like whenever I hear a fact like that, I don't want to believe it, but
Yeah.
yeah, like that's
Because
it's
how would you leave? Like, what?
yeah.
You would be like storing $1 bills, like, until you
Yeah,
had
like
a way of leaving?
I don't even know how people managed back then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane. Yeah.
And like I just worry a lot about like what my girls are going to have to deal with in the future. Like what will their lives be like? What rights will they not have? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's scary to think about.
No, and I think people in America too take for granted some of the things that have not happened in our lifetime,
Mhm.
like things like looking at, pictures of Afghanistan in the 70s. Those are cautionary tales. Like those people, I mean, they
Oh my
looked
gosh,
just like
yes.
Americans in the 70s. Like there was no
Yeah.
difference in like beach scenes and parties and everything. It was so
Yeah.
liberal, and
Mhm.
things turn on a dime. And
They do.
yeah, I think we
I've
have this
heard
weird bubble here.
too many people say we'll be absolutely fine. We have a constitution. Everything will be.
Mhm.
I'm like, no, you're missing the point. Like
Yeah,
those things can go away tomorrow. Like we
yeah,
cannot assume anything. Like
yeah.
other
And
countries
women's
have
rights
had
weren't
constitutions that got thrown out the window.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even like Project 2025, like that, the points that they have on there are not like mild, The
No,
things
and
that they
some of
want to
them are
change are
so
not,
insane that I'm like,
yeah,
who are you catering this to? Like, I don't know.
yeah. The idea
I
that they would
don't.
hire basically like an executive branch that that is only like uh, employees of the president and
Mhm.
not actual like government employees. Like
Yeah.
this concept is also fascinating to me. I'm like, what? This okay. I don't understand how
Yeah.
everyone's just saying this with a straight face. Like this is the United States of America and what
Mhm.
what this is supposed to be like. I'm like, we all
It's
watched
scary to
how a bill
think
becomes
that
a law.
so many people either don't know about it at all or
Yeah.
don't take it seriously because it doesn't sound serious and I don't know. I'm just absolutely terrified because like so many people are just
Yeah.
like, no, it'll be fine. We've been through worse, and you know,
Yeah.
like we haven't been through worse, not yet.
Yeah. Not on domestic soil, not like in
Yeah,
this type of fundamental, three branches of government kind of way. Like,
yeah, like
turning into one. Like it's not. So I don't know. I was already starting. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but how many people know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks? Like, unless they're like actively
Yeah.
trying.
That's
And
way too early. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, this book explores the power of rumor and reputation. Even though Elizabeth is declared sane, rumors persist about her sanity for the rest of her life and are used to discredit her. Can you think of any modern day examples where even though someone had been cleared of something, their opponents continue to use that something against them? And do you think this is fair game or is it morally wrong? I mean, we do that all the time. Like, that's just kind of how cancel culture works in a way. Like, you do one wrong thing, even if it was proven that you didn't actually do that thing, it doesn't matter. You did it. Like,
yeah, now it doesn't matter how long ago you did it or how much has changed since you did it.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah. I think we are less forgiving as a society. I don't know if we're less forgiving or we're just, maybe we've always been like that, but it just stands out more now because we have such a broad reach.
Yeah. I think it's so hard to forget things because all it takes is like one click to be like, oh, did you know? Blah, 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 blah. Like, and
it's so hard to prove a rumor wrong.
Yeah. How can you know? Parsing through that is very interesting. I mean, I felt the same thing when the whole like Me Too movement happened and stuff, because having worked in corporate environments, like I was intrigued by how that was going to play out if like everyone had to be believed at every time. Having worked with very powerful females and males and like very powerful good people and very powerful not so great people, like, you know, as somebody who's like very much like, I feel like women and men are both human beings, you know, full of the goodness of what it is to be human and like the darkness of what it is to be human. And it was very interesting to hear like these blanket statements, you know, like, and in all of that, like, I think if you go too far to one side in any case, right, like you are dismissing the potential truth of the other, right? Like, I don't think we deserve anything special just because of our sex and vice versa. You know, like, I think the burden should be the same, you know, of everything. I think there's definite institutional norms that have to be changed and stuff and protections put into place and stuff like that. But I feel like it's the same thing that we're talking about at the beginning of this conversation. Whenever we go too far into one way of being right and like only one opinion to say, like that was like an opinion you could not say, you know, like during the heyday of the Me Too thing, like you could not say something like, well, you know, maybe there is some burden of proof. Like there has to be some burden of proof, because otherwise you can really run into situations where it is a vendetta, you know, and it is someone who just wants to take down someone else who, for their own reason. And I say that because I give so much credit to women, you know, because I think that women are very smart and are very deserving and are like also cunning and all of those things that we, you know, ascribe to men. Like these things can exist together in tandem, right? Like, I don't know. I think women are always in a dangerous spot because of everything we care about, though, and everything we have to lose.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that's maybe the finger that we should have on our side of the scale is, you know, just like this whole children question and stuff. Like, I wonder how many women weren't put into insane asylums or were entirely silenced by this threat. Probably like countless, right? Like, I mean, if someone had told me, like when I had a, you know, recently nursing child and stuff, like come to church or I'm going to put you in an asylum, I'd be like, I'll be at church. Like I would.
Yeah.
I know myself,
Same.
you know? So,
yeah. And that's what's so frustrating. Like so many women were forced to be meek and quiet and just go along with whatever their husband said, because otherwise they could be put away. And like, I don't know, that makes me sad for the women who just stopped talking, stopped trying.
Yeah.
And like
No.
women were in asylums for so many stupid reasons too. Like what did they say? Reading? She reads too many novels.
Yes. Yeah.
I was
This
like,
newfangled
excuse me?
hobby. Yeah.
I can't read now. Like, I don't know. That would, yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
found that.
that's that mug, right? I think you have this mug too, because I think
Yeah.
I've seen you post it, but it's like she's read too many books or something and it has turned
Yeah.
her brain.
Yes. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll keep my books, I guess. I guess I'm
Yeah.
insane, but yeah.
Oh, and if you watch Bridgerton, like, the mom tells Penelope in one of the scenes, I knew like letting you read would make you believe in things like love. Would come to this. All of those books. No.
Yeah.
I do think women are always in danger though. Like I think there is the fact that we care about our families and our children is, I think, definitely a strength in how much we care about the future and what we can do to change it, and how we safeguard the present. But I also think in sheer time, it is a burden, and because like we say, it takes a certain amount of time to make dinner and put people to bed and do laundry and do the life of a mom. And, like it's, for that alone, honestly, it's impressive in that era that anyone was able to write like dissertations on women's rights and like,
yeah, I don't know. I
things
always
like that.
found the suffragist movement is fascinating that these women had time for that. Like,
yeah. And how fortunate that women who did have time, who were privileged, actually cared.
yes,
That's
I'm grateful to
like,
them. Yeah.
yeah, because it would have been very easy to not have enough of them. And women who had things to lose, like this threat of like being shut away.
Yeah.
So.
Which of Elizabeth's many accomplishments do you think she was the most proud of? And is there anything else you see as her greatest achievement? I mean, I think she would probably say the fact that she was able to get laws made and like save other women would probably be her greatest achievement.
Yeah.
At least I would see that as her greatest achievement.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything, the ball she set rolling into motion definitely is why at least this particular scare is not, as prevalent today as it once was.
Like the number of women she probably saved alone is impressive.
I thought it was sad that she couldn't prevent her own daughter from being
That was so sad.
institutionalized.
Yeah.
Like to watch that happen for her must have been,
that would have been devastating.
Horrible. Yeah. If you like, what do you see yourself doing? And I'm asking like everybody who's in the chat too. Like if something does come down the pike where, there's always these like meme comparisons to The Handmaid's Tale and things like that. But I mean, like, I think it is more insidious than that, and I think it is slower. Though I think maybe that's just wishful thinking also. But especially in light of Chevron from yesterday, and as agencies lose their ability to have oversight over how laws are interpreted, with a very conservative Supreme Court right now, right? If you start having decisions being made for not just women's health, but like women's rights and like women's ability to like, gain a foothold in like academics and things like that, these like scholarship opportunities, these special things that we do have in place to account for the institutional unevenness of everything. What would we do? Like all of us, like what would we do, practically speaking, if we see our daughters' rights being taken away? Even like property rights and inheritance rights and all of these things are very easy, right, to take away because they're like things you
Mhm.
don't notice until it arises for you, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that any part of my education has taught me how to fight things. You
Yeah, I
know?
mean,
Like,
that was like the scariest part of The Handmaid's Tale, I think, is like how insidiously quiet it happened. Like it just sort of one day this was a thing, and then the next day that was a thing, and then all of a sudden your
mhm.
rights are gone and you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
those
know.
flashback scenes are some of the scariest things in The
Yeah.
Handmaid's Tale,
Hmm.
where they're like, "Oh, could you go pick up my birth control because, women can no longer, like, get it without a
Hmm.
husband's signature," and random things like that. Like, I feel like I don't think those are outside the realm of possibility, you know?
No.
And, I mean, we all joke about, I say we all, but a lot of people who are alarmed joke about leaving the country and all this stuff. And it's not necessarily jokes because I definitely know people who are completely intentional, but
Yeah.
if you stay, then how do you, like, I don't know, it's on my mind. Like, what
It's
does one
on a lot
do?
of our minds, I
Yeah.
think.
You
Yeah.
know?
I'd like to think I could just flee the country, but like that's not any easier, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
where do you go? But no, I don't know. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot too. Like, how do you fight back in a scenario where you have no rights?
Yeah. Like, just the gumption she had, like, just the way she did
Hmm.
it. Like, I think that's one thing. I wish in the book we had had more of that section of her life too,
Hmm.
like this piece outside of the insane asylum.
Hmm.
Because that's no joke. Like, to go about figuring out how to, like, they kind of glossed over how she got her book published, and yes, she had that, like, crowdsourcing effort and all that, but, like, the distribution of that and getting people to listen to you in a room and, like, in other cities having these pamphlets published and, like, all of that, like, that's like you're on your feet and, like, climbing steps and knocking on doors and waiting, while being
Yeah.
insulted and all of that. And I think that, you know, yes, the fight to prove her sanity was remarkable, but I also think part of the reason she got out at the end was just because he wanted her out. Like, McFarland felt like she was more trouble than she was worth.
Hmm.
Um, but but her actually managing to make it more than that, more than just achieving her freedom, like, that's remarkable. I would have loved to hear more about how that, actually played out and how all her children came back to live with her and things
Hmm.
like that. So
Yeah.
I think all of that's unusual. So,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Like her whole life was just so interesting. Like I would definitely read a sequel that like
mhm,
carried on her story.
yeah.
Yeah, agree, Brittany. Like I both want to run away and stay to fight, but also like how do you fight? Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's basically my question, right? Because my urge, and that's what I mean too about the weakness of, like, family.
Hmm.
Like, yes, it's a strength because we care, but also I think this urge to protect your little tribe is so strong.
Hmm.
So, and to create actual change, do you need people like her who are, like, willing to accept that sacrifice of their family? Because
Hmm.
for years, right, it was a sacrifice,
Yeah.
like a conscious thing on her part.
Yeah, definitely. Like you need people strong enough to do that, to lay their life on the line, I guess, to
Mhm.
really make things happen.
And
But
to,
yeah, I
like,
just
accept that, your daughter's gonna grow up without you and stuff like that, like,
hmm.
all of that stuff, like that decision. Mm.
Yeah, I'm glad I saved this to read now. I don't know. This just felt like the right time for this book.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I've owned it, I think, since it came out, and I just hadn't gotten to it yet. And it's one
For
of those books that's meant
nonfiction,
to.
it was a weirdly swift read, I thought,
It really was like
you know?
her writing is very readable. Like,
Yeah.
you just fly through it. It's so compelling. Like, the stories that she tells are so interesting. Like, you just can't stop reading.
Yeah.
I needed to see how it all played out.
Exactly. Like, yeah. It's a book that, you know, like when you on Storygraph, where you have to say like how the book made you feel. Those, like, what kinds of,
Yeah.
I was like, tense, emotional, challenging. Like, all the things.
I had a lot of feelings reading this book.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, most of them were rage.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what is up next for us?
We are going to be reading As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Katu. This is modern history. I would say this is like recent history, because this is set during the Syrian war. But I'm not sure like when during the war. I don't know if it tells you like a specific date, but I've heard so many people talk about this book. They've compared it to like The Book Thief and things like that. And when you compare something to The Book Thief, like, I'm expecting it to deliver.
Yeah.
So, but I've heard a lot of really rave reviews. So I've been wanting to read this for a while. And I just thought it would probably lead to a good discussion. So I wanted to do this as a book club book, but yeah, I don't really know a lot about the actual story, because I don't like reading the synopsis or reading too much of a synopsis, but I know it has to do with the Syrian war, and I believe that it's like a refugee story. So
I like the cover.
It's a beautiful book. Like, that's gorgeous. Yeah. So yeah, so we're going to be reading this. As far as I know, we'll be doing the first Saturday in August, because, hold on, let me look at the calendar, because it's like the 3rd. So it's really early in the month. So that should work out. So we'll be back to our normal schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to read this. I've been putting it off. When did this come out? This is a relatively new book, I think. Yeah, 2022. This was a book I pre-ordered based on the cover. So I've had that for a while. So yeah, very excited. I'll be putting that up in the Discord group, hopefully later today, if I remember, but sometime in the next few days, in case people want to get an early start. I'm still going to wait and read it like right before. I always want the book club book to be like the last thing I read.
I thought this book would take longer, so I started it earlier, and then I finished it so quickly. So it's like, and then I panicked a little earlier this week, because I was like, have I not read the book that I'm supposed to read? Because it felt like a little bit a while ago. So
I was the opposite. I waited because I was already reading like too many things. So I'm like, I have to finish this and then I can start. And then I didn't finish the book until Tuesday. And I was like, oh God, have I not given myself enough time? And I was in a panic, but it read really quickly. So.
Hi, I have a visitor.
Hi.
Okay. Go get help from Dad. I don't know. Whatever you need help for. Okay. Just visiting. There is no do not disturb sign that will keep them out.
Never. Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and wrap up our discussion today. Thank you all for coming. I think we had a really great discussion. This was awesome. Thank you so much for joining in. And we'll see you next month to talk about As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. So until then, happy reading. Bye.
Bye.